This lesson is draping basics, muslin, blocking, marking and pressing. This lesson will be taught by Times and Trends Academy. Module 1, Muslin Types and Uses. In this lesson, you will learn about the different types of muslin used in draping and how to prepare your muslin for draping. You'll also learn the importance of fabric grain and how to cut, block, mark and press your muslin before draping so that your drape designs are balanced, they fit well and look professional. So let's start with the definition of draping. Draping is a three-dimensional process used in the fashion industry to create a pattern for a particular design. Designs can be draped in their actual end-use fabric or in a reasonable facsimile fabric. However, most often they are draped in one of three different types of muslin. Every fabric supplier calls these types of muslins by their own product name. However, in the fashion industry and at fashion schools are referred to as quality number 1, number 2 and tailoring muslin or tailoring canvas. So what is muslin? Muslin is an inexpensive cotton fabric that is unbleached and unsized, meaning it has no finish and therefore a perfect choice when experimenting and draping new design concepts. Selecting the right muslin for a particular design is critical to success of that draped design. The three most common muslins used for draping are number 1, number 2 and tailoring muslin or tailoring canvas. Number 1 muslin is a coarse, unbleached, unfinished cotton fabric. It's a loose, plain weave construction whereby you can easily see the lengthwise and crosswise grains of the fabric. It comes in widths ranging from 36 inches to 118 inches wide. Number 1 muslin's cross grain, also known as the weft, can be identified in 4 different ways. The first is the cross grain yarns are slubby and not as strong as length grain yarns. Cross grain yarns are fuzzier than length grain yarns as demonstrated here on a muslin block's raw edge. Cross grain has a slight stretch to it while the length grain has almost none. Another way to tell the difference between the cross grain and the straight grain on a piece of number 1 muslin is that when you try to make folds on a number 1 muslin in the cross grain, the fabric has a bit of bounce to it and won't lie flat. And yet when you make folds along the length grain, the grains come firm and the folds will lie flat. This is a very useful test when working with a square muslin block. Number 1 muslin's length grain, also known as the warp, can also be identified in 4 different ways. Number 1, length grain yarn fibers are straighter compared to the slubby cross grain yarns. 2, the fabric lies flatter in the length grain and doesn't bounce like cross grain. 3, length grain yarns fibers are stronger than cross grain yarn fibers. 4, length grain has almost no stretch, which is why clothing, especially pants, are cut in the length grain. Clothes cut on length grain hang better. Number 1 muslin is a good choice for beginners and the perfect choice for draping lessons such as the basic bodice, the basic straight skirt or any design that calls for a medium weight fabric. It is easy to work with, has a bit of structure and is perfect for marking and truing. Now let's discuss number 2 muslin. This quality of muslin is also 100% unbleached cotton. However, number 2 muslin differs from number 1 in that the cross and length grain yarns are less pronounced because of its tighter weave construction. Number 2 muslin is finer and lighter in weight than number 1 muslin and is most often used for draping softer silhouettes such as full skirts and cowls. Tailoring canvas or tailoring muslin, as it sometimes referred to, is also 100% unbleached cotton. This quality is densely woven and a heavier construction and weighted than both number 1 and number 2 muslin. Unlike number 1 muslin, tailoring canvas is harder to handle and is primarily used when draping jackets and coats or for more structured design. Beginners to draping should start out by choosing the correct muslin for their skill level. To get the best draping results for your design, always choose a muslin that effectively mimics the hand and feel of your end-use fabric. No matter which quality of muslin you are using, always press your muslin before draping, since not all muslins are pre-shrunk. Muslin grain. Fabric grain refers to the direction that the yarns or threads run in the fabric. A plain weave muslin fabric is created by interlacing two sets of yarns. The length of warp grain runs in a vertical direction, parallel to the selvage. The cross grain or the weft grain runs in the horizontal direction of the fabric and goes from selvage to selvage. Both grains are referred to as the straight grain. A woven fabric stretches a small amount on the cross grain, where a little stretch in the length grain, and of course the bias has the most stretch, as the instructor demonstrates here by pulling on the corners of the fabric swatch. We know that muslin stretches a bit on the cross grain, but to achieve the maximum amount of stretch and to create a garment that contours the curves of the body, you would definitely want to drape your design on the bias grain. This is the grain that runs at a true diagonal to the cross and length grains. The ability to recognize and utilize the fabric grain correctly is a key to accurate draping and pattern layout. A garment that is draped off grain or on the wrong grain will not hang or fit properly on the figure. The end result will be an unflattering silhouette and a garment that does not wear well. Module 3. Muslin Prep, Measuring and Tearing. The first step when preparing your muslin for draping is to remove the selvage edge, since the selvage acts like a binding. Here, the instructor demonstrates how to snip the selvage edge of the muslin with her scissors and then tears the muslin with her hands. Next, the instructor demonstrates how to measure and tear the size of the muslin block that she needs. She measures her desired block length, then snips the edge with the fabric shears and tears the muslin across the width. She repeats the process on the other length edge. The best way to know that you are on a straight grain, both cross and length, is to tear the muslin with your hands so that you end up with an on-grain muslin piece instead of cutting it with fabric shears. One way to test for straight grain is to pick up a single yarn from the edge of the muslin. A single yarn should come out in one long strand from end to end. Module 4. Blocking muslin. Once you have measured and torn your muslin piece, the next step is called blocking. Blocking is the process of manipulating your muslin piece so that your cross and length grains are at the right angles to one another. Here's how you do it. Position your muslin piece on the table. You will align the cross and length edges of the muslin to the edge of your L square to check that the muslin edges perfectly align with the L square. You could also use the corner edge of a table. If your muslin edges are curling, you may want to gently flatten them with your hands. Notice how the edge of this muslin piece is not aligned with the corner of the L square. This means the muslin needs blocking. To block this muslin, we need to pull on the corner that is opposite to the one that doesn't align. Gently stretch the corner of the muslin on the diagonal along the piece. This will help guide the grains into place. Then place the muslin piece back on the table to check that the edges align using the L square. Also, you can see if this muslin needs additional blocking. Repeat the process of pulling the corners of the muslin. Place the muslin back on the table as demonstrated to check again whether the muslin is aligned with the L square. Another way to check if your muslin needs blocking is to fold it in half in the cross grain and match it to the corners. Then turn the muslin and match up the corners in the direction of the length grain. If the corners don't match in either the cross or length, then you need to block the muslin. Module 5. Pressing muslin. Pressing the muslin block is next. Once your muslin piece is blocked, you are ready to press it with an iron. It's important to press the muslin block first without steam to press out any wrinkles and to flatten the edges. Always press in the direction of the grain. Slide the iron along the length or the cross grain but never on the diagonal. Otherwise, you will run the risk of stretching the grain. Stretching the grain will result in having to reblock your muslin. Press with steam to set the grains. Once you have pressed the piece flat, allow the muslin block to cool before removing it from the ironing board. Check that the muslin piece hasn't stretched during pressing by repeating the process of aligning the edges with your L square. Module 6. Marking your muslin. In preparation for draping, each of our lessons will require you to mark guidelines on your muslin blocks. One way to do this is by using a sharpened number 2 HB pencil to drag a guideline down the straight grain of your muslin as demonstrated. Or you can pull a single yarn from either the length or width grain as demonstrated. While this is time consuming, it is the most accurate way to find the grain. Another way is to use the point of a pushpin to drag your guideline down. Then you go back in and mark the guideline using a pencil and ruler. Once the muslin block has been marked, you may need to reblock and then press your muslin piece with steam to set the grains. Be sure to let the muslin piece cool before removing it from the ironing board. Once you have blocked and pressed all your muslin pieces, you are ready to begin with draping. And these are your draping basics for muslin, blocking, marking and pressing. Happy learning!